Kilim is an auction game for 2 to 5 players, but really, if it's an auction game, you want to go 3 at least, so I consider it 3 to 5, although there are rules for 2. And it is auction game and tile laying game, so basically combines 2 of my favorite game mechanics, which means when I learned about it and when I read the rules, I was massively excited about it. In this game, we're gonna collect tiles representing different kinds of interwoven fabrics, and we're gonna place them in our personal area to create our Kilim, and at the end of the game, we'll score points for that. There are 3 stacks, 1 for each round, so you play a round, and then you reset some things, and then you start the second and the third. And these will represent, again, different types of fabric and different combinations. So you shuffle all of these together by stack. There's also a number of tiles representing partially good and partially torn fabric, and you shuffle a number of these tiles in those stacks depending on the number of players. Then you have the perfect pattern, which can only be accessed by using a special ability that will give you a token from this display here, and there are different tokens that give you different abilities, including the one that I mentioned that gives you the perfect pattern to add to your personal area. And you have also a stack of single scraps of fabric, and there's an ability that lets you access that. The general mechanic is pretty simple. At the beginning of each turn, we take the top tile from the stack that we're playing. That one is for round 1. And then players can bid on it. Each player has an identical deck of cards. 3 are special cards with special abilities, and the others have numerical values between 1 and 15. And so everybody commits a card, and then everybody reveals it, and the highest bid wins the auction. Possibly not me. I said possibly because there's this interesting idea that if the highest bid is tied, say the highest are 8 and 8, then we go and look at the second bid, and if that is tied also, we go down until there is a non-tied bid. So potentially 2 people played 15 and 15, and that's the highest, and then I'm the third player. We're playing only 3, and it's me. I could potentially win that with a 1. And I've seen sometimes happening, yeah, people win like with very low bids. If it's all tied, so you cannot assign it, the tile stays there, you reveal the next one, and so the next bid will be for both. So that's for assigning it based on gold. But as I showed you, there are also special cards. If somebody played those special cards, those are resolved before we actually assign that. Somebody played the monkey is the spy, so if you played the monkey, then after you see what other people have played, you can play a card from your hand, which means you may be able to win a bid on the cheap that way. You get extra information. If somebody played the bag of scraps, they can access these tiles here that I showed you earlier that were on that display, but only if they can also pay a card which is higher than the cost of the winning bid for that one. So if the winning bid was a 10 and I played this one, then I'll be able to take a scrap only if I can pay 11 or higher. If somebody played the artisan, then they can access one of those special tokens. They can collect one of those tokens that I showed you earlier, but only if they can pay an amount which is lower than the winning bid. This is a bit fiddly. I wish there was a simpler way of resolving these special cards rather than remember which one is higher, which one is lower. And it could be that you don't have the higher card, or you don't have the lower card because you got rid of all of your cheapo cards earlier, and then you can't do it. But these are the things that they give you special stuff if you can pay the corresponding amount. And these tokens will allow you to do different things, such as to rotate a tile in your Kilim, because otherwise, once you place them, they're stuck there. Get the perfect thing, remove a tile for your Kilim, and also move a tile somewhere in your Kilim. So that's how you acquire cards and possibly tokens. Also, those tiles and tokens, those tokens also, if not used, are returned to the display at the end of the day. So later in the day, those tiles become less interesting. Also, on top of the fact that later in the game, there are fewer possibly available. So when all is said and done, we resolve special effects. So we resolve the auction. Somebody possibly gets the tile. And then we repeat. Now, when you get a tile, you place it in your display. The first one just goes in front of you. Later ones need to have to be adjacent. They don't need to match, but you will want to match. But definitely they need to be adjacent. They can't just be hanging by themselves or touching only by the corner. And that's how, as you will see, gradually your Kilim will take shape. Ideally, you will want your final Kilim to be a rectangle or a square because there's a good amount of points scored for that. And suppose that, so this is the situation. And maybe this is my very Kilim at the end of the game. So then we score points, and we take one of these sheets here, and then we score points. So for the shape, there's gonna be points assigned for how many you score. So it's 10 points for rectangular or square Kilim. If your Kilim has only 3 types of patterns, you score 10 points. If your Kilim has all 5 patterns, it's not the most intuitive way of representing that. If the Kilim has all 5 types of patterns, you score 5 points. Now, for each group of adjacent patterns, you score points equal to the number of adjacent patterns minus 1. That's one. If you have 2, scores 1. If you have 4, scores 3, and so on and so forth. In this case, for example, I have it's the same pattern? Yeah. I have 5 of this pattern, so this area will score me 4 points, and here I have 5 also. This area will score me 4, 2 points, and this one scores me 0. And then the crown. For each pattern, the player with the single largest group scores 5 points. Remember, these torn patterns may be visible in my Kilim. And if for each of these patterns that is visible, I lose 3 points. And once you get them, you could cover them with these other tiles if you get access to them. Or you could also use an ability, one of those tokens later, to just remove it. This is it. This is the game. Draw a tile, bid for it, assign it, usually add it to your Kilim, repeat. This game combines 2 of my favorite mechanics, auction and tile laying, and yet it completely fell flat for me. I started super exciting, and my excitement just did not last very long. What is the problem? First, the game feels too repetitive. There's no sense of acceleration. There's no sense of mounting excitement. To me, a game is more interesting if there is an arc, there is a climax. If round 3 is different and hopefully more interesting, the round 2 and 2 is possibly more interesting and more stuff going on in round 1. But no, this is not the case. This is very much rinse and repeat. Not only that, if rinse and repeat at least means it stays flat, it stays similar, but actually within each round and from round to round, things become less interesting. Well, within a round, there's not much mitigation. Once I played the best cards because I really wanted something, well, then I have only weaker cards. And so luck plays a big element here. In auction games, I want to be able to figure out what other people may be doing, trying to manipulate what they're doing. Maybe I'm bidding high on something I don't care so much about because I'm trying to hope that somebody wastes their money. But here, well, the bid is simultaneous, so I cannot influence other bids. And they just no amount of mind reading, unless we invent actual mind reading, they'll be able to let me know if you're going to play a 12 or a 13 or an 11 or a 12, which means I'm bidding somewhat high, somewhat low, but there's going to be a huge random element whether a 13 is going to be the winning bid or a tie. And then random element of like a lower card scoring. I like action games that create a mind game. This one doesn't, because the range of possible things that you can bid from 1 to 15 is too large because of the impact of the tie, which seemed interesting and fun at the beginning, but it just adds a lot of chaos. And that is a problem. It feels like a vastly random bid, and sometimes I win something incredible, and I don't think I quote-unquote deserved it. It's not an outcome of my strategy, and sometimes I don't get something that I really need. But I don't feel that I played wrong. I feel that I just have no way of ascertaining if you're going to play a 10, 11, 12, or 13. That just feels random. So there is a big random element here, and the rounds become less interesting over time because maybe the good tokens were taken, or there just isn't any token that I need, so the artisan card is uninteresting, maybe, and these are a limited resource, so after a while, that action also becomes uninteresting because maybe later in the game, I don't need those tiles, so that card is completely wasted. I just know I'm never going to use that option again in the game. So you see, it kind of like narrows your windows of opportunity, your space for agents is actually narrower as the game progresses, and as you're locking different strategies. It would be very cool for me to look at your Kilim and say, wait, if I get an extra tile of that, now I have the largest group. But that doesn't matter if, again, I don't have real control on the kind of tile that I may get next, and I just don't have the good cards to do that. Again, most importantly, the bonus for the square or the rectangle is really good. 10 points is pretty massive, and it may make the difference between winning or losing. Meaning, if in the second half of the third round, I think I have a good enough Kilim, and I have the right shape, I may just wasting my cards, and I may just try not to win, which makes, again, the end of the game where you would want it to be climactic, where I want it to be climactic, I'm just literally trying to skip turns because I think I can win. And then what happens? Maybe I do win a card with a 1, and now I'm stuck with something stupid. And again, I lose because of randomness. So it is just a game to me that in the best case scenario is flat. It has no acceleration because the 3 rounds are identical to one another. In truth, it becomes less interesting and less exciting as you go, because in order to try to win, you may not want to mess up a good situation that you have, and just the actions of the bag of scraps, the action of the artisan, they become less interesting over time because they're so limited. So this didn't work for me. My friends didn't enjoy it either for basically the same reasons. It felt flat, it felt unexciting, and it felt it had too much randomness in it. And this is my sad and disappointed assessment of Kilim.